for me, what I found is nowadays, I just avoid being around confused people. Hi, welcome back, guys. Why living in the gray is dangerous. Now, what do I mean? I think today we live in a world where a lot of things are more acceptable today than they were in the past. Due to technology and access to information, technically, a lot of people know a lot of things. But what that has done is, because we have so much information at the tip of our tip of our fingers. It's very easy to stop being very clear about your value system. It's very easy to seesaw between ideas. It's very easy to always be in the middle, right? To never really make firm decisions or have very firm convictions about things. Now, I say this because I'm generally a very black and white person. I never always used to be like that, but I am, because I would avoid conflict. So I would be the kind of person, if you tell me, Lillian, what do you think? I'll be like, whatever you think is fine. Whatever you want is good. So I was really good at living in the gray, you know? So I could be opinionated, but because I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, I will not necessarily come out and say exactly what I want to say or what I think about a situation. Now, why I've said that living in the gray, and that is what I call living in the gray. So that's how I was. I'm no longer like that. These days, I think I'm more direct, but that's how I was for the longest time. Like, I don't think, it was very hard for me to say, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like this. So what would happen, and it would just be this would be my fault. I would find myself in situations where I'm doing things that I really don't want to do. But because I don't have the guts to say no or to give my opinion, I would just find myself in very compromising situations. So I'll give you an example. I know in the past, I mean, this is embarrassing right now to say, but guys, we are on the Unafraid podcast. So if I don't say them, who will? I've dated people who I never had business dating, you know? And there's a lot of layers, okay, in just that statement. I know it's not just about being in the gray. There are a lot of other things, like there's insecurities that probably I had. There was me not just being able to speak. There's a lot of that. But I want to give the consequences sometimes of living in the middle, not being firm about your yes or your no. So I was always that person who I was never firm about my yes or my no. I would be anywhere. So you'd find that it was very easy to get me to do things or to agree to things that I maybe I wasn't clear on my thought process or what I really wanted. But I was also not communicating that I was not clear. So because I was not clear, I would just be like, okay, whatever it is you want. And guys, that really, really cost me a lot of time, energy, resources, emotions, because of living in the gray. So this episode is for those people who are still living in the gray and have not learned to say no or to say yes with firmness. Like, it's very important to be black and white. And why, again, we are seeing a wave in our country right now with the younger generation where they are speaking up. And for the longest time, speaking up in this country, or just generally amongst adults in the room, was seen as, especially by a younger person, was seen as disrespectful. Okay. And so a lot of us in the older generation, we did not learn to speak up. So what happened is, like I said, we would just go along with things. So you find that in the last couple of years in the country, we have not been speaking up, or if we have, our voices have been tamed because of the repercussions. So, nobody, especially at my age, for example, I'm a mother, and then I am a mother still parenting on my own. I still don't have a partner. So I always imagine if I get in trouble with the law and I have issues legally, then who takes care of my child? And a lot of adults are like that. Like when you have responsibilities, arguably, you're not going to run around the streets protesting, right? But what happens is when you learn not to speak up, when you learn to not have your yes be yes and your no be no, and be very bold about it or unafraid about it, you end up living in the gray. And the gray is literally a terrible place to be. So, how can we stop living in the gray, guys? For me, what I found is nowadays, I just avoid being around confused people. I don't know if you've ever been in a meeting. I remember there's a time when, I can't remember what, it was a group, it was a meeting. We went for this meeting, and people were trying to come up with ideas to do whatever it is they need to do for whatever agenda project it was. And I remember everyone was just giving their own opinions, and it was a very diverse, opinionated meeting. But at the end of that meeting, I left just wondering, okay, what was that meeting about? You know the way you've gone for a meeting and there's been no conclusion, and you realize that the reason why there was no conclusion is because everyone in that meeting was confused, and so it rubbed off on you. So you ended up leaving not even knowing what it is you're supposed to do. So now you have to have another meeting to come and clarify what was discussed in the first meeting. So, number one, avoid confused groupings or people. Okay, so that's the first thing. Number two, to avoid living in the gray, avoid people who will not tell you the truth. Now, because of my personality, sometimes in the past, I never used to like being corrected. I always thought I was right? Sometimes, definitely, many times I wasn't right. And what that meant was, and then because I'm kind of bold and kind of opinionated, kind of have strong opinions. So not opinionated is negative. I have strong opinions about things. So people would be afraid to tell me the truth for whatever reason, or would be afraid to just call me out when maybe I'm going in a different tangent. And even when there were situations where I was the victim, my people would just be like, oh, Lillian, oh, sorry. And they would let me cry and whine and everything, etc., and leave it at that. But guys, sometimes it is important to call people out, or to be around people who can call you out. I think that's even more important. It's not about you. It's about you being around people who will be able to tell you in a safe space what's up. Otherwise, you're always blinded. Right? And to be fair, like I said, I never really let people in easily. So I never really put myself in a situation whereby somebody can tell me the truth unless I want them to tell me the truth. But what I've learned over time, that it's important to provide a safe space for people to be able to approach you, so that you don't get into weird situations. Another thing is, you need to be open to changing your mind. Now, when I say open to changing your mind, it may be a bit contradictory to what I'm saying about being black and white. That you have to be very clear. Your no has to be your no, your yes has to be your yes. That's important. That's very important. However, be okay with also the idea that at some point in time, that yes can actually be a no. Okay? You can change your mind about something. When you gain new information, right, you can change your mind about something. So let me give you an example as it relates to what I'm talking about, being in the gray. When you're being in the gray, it means, in Kiswahili we say hauna msimamo, you have no stand, really a firm stand. Nobody really knows where you're at. Sometimes you'll be like, are you this person's friend? You're like, yeah, I know them, I don't know them, but then we're always seeing you with this person, but then you're saying, no, we're not friends, kind of thing. Or what's your opinion on the finance bill? But because you are affiliated to a political grouping that supports the bill or is against the bill, anytime depending on the environment that you're in, you kind of shift your position, right? Now, what I want to say is that then makes you in the gray, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help. I think it's important that we are okay with saying, yes, I had made a wrong decision here, and I actually thought A, B, C, D about this situation, and I was very vocal. You could even have been online. Like right now, I'm telling you something. I'm talking to you guys about something, right? I'm giving you guys my ideas. But just because I speak about them today doesn't mean that in 10 years' time, if I think differently, I'm not allowed to come back and say, I've changed my mind, right? I am. Because if I don't, then it means I'm going back to living in the middle. I'm here, I had said one thing, I was very vocal about it, but then deep down I go back and I'm like, no, I shouldn't have said that, and then I don't communicate the change. So I'm still in the middle. And what happens is you then stop coming out as an authentic person. You then stop looking like a genuine person. You then stop being a trustworthy person. So there's this podcast that I follow online, and I remember, I think I was very proud of what they did. They had invited some guests on their podcast, and they had a discussion with this guest, but it was a very controversial guest, very controversial. And I remember the followers of the podcast were commenting, like it was a live, they were doing a live podcast, live recording, so it was a live play. And there were people who are commenting in the section like, you guys, what are you doing? Why are you bringing this guest on the show, right? And what happened the next show when in fact, I think they decided to have a show 2 days later, and they brought in other guests who were coming to counter what this previous guest on their show had said. And the reason why they were doing that was because they realized, one, there was backlash, but then they also realized that their stand before about bringing this guest, which they thought was a brilliant idea, was actually not a bad idea. Was actually not a good idea. And they were willing to, they could have decided, okay, we know it's not a bad idea, but you know what? It's my podcast. It has gotten 1 million views, so let it keep running, right? Because we are here for the monies, right? You're here for the money. But what they did is, the next day, they apologized to their community immediately. Then they brought in the guests who came to just help clarify issues, new guests on their podcast who came to clarify new issues. And they acknowledged on that podcast that they had been wrong. And now that they understand things better, they now have this new opinion, right? Had they kept quiet and continued with their podcast, or something else that they did is they brought down the previous episode. So it's almost like, if let's say today I say something completely controversial, I should be bold enough to come back and say, guys, I'm really sorry. What I said yesterday was wrong. And go as far as saying, I'll take down that video. Please note that that video could garner millions of views and a lot of income for those people who are already monetizing online, right? But I should not let that compromise my values, because then that makes me look like a very, we say watermelon, in Kenya we say watermelon kind of person, where you're neither here nor there, right? So I hope that makes sense, guys. For me, I'm just really big on us being more authentic and us not being afraid to just really have a stand. And I say this with a lot of passion because, like I said, I have been that person who never had a stand. I've been that person who was a people pleaser, complete people pleaser. I'd be like, okay, whatever you say, I agree with you. Whatever you say, I agree with you. And I'm in the middle. I don't have enemies, because I didn't want to have enemies because like I said, I love people and I never want to be in conflict with people. But sometimes you have to take a stand. You have to take a stand. So I hope this will help those who are struggling with being black or white and always want to be in the middle, in the gray. I hope today, right, you will learn to do better, yeah, and be unafraid. Thank you guys. See you. Bye.